All I have needed When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my life thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul, with my soul. It is well with my soul. My sin, know the bliss of this glorious thought. My sin, not in part, but the whole, is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, oh my soul. It is well with my soul, with my soul. It is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when my face shall be sight, and the clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul, with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. They say sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. And right now I'm losing bad. I've stood on this stage night after night, reminding the broken it'll be alright. But right now, I just can't. It's easy to sing when there's nothing to bring me down. But what will I say when I'm held to the flame like I am right now? I know you're able and I know you can save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. They say it only takes a little faith to move a mountain. Well, good thing, a little faith is all I have.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our worship service here at Obed's Church Nazarene. I just want to make a couple of announcements, and we're redoing our service a little bit this morning. This is the beginning of our new church year, and so what we normally do here at the beginning of our church year is to have reports of the last year. So we're going to be sliding a few reports in here this morning as well. So just to let you know, we are extending our closure through Saturday, April 4th. This includes our midweek services, free meal, and food pantry as well. We're planning to be open once again on Sunday, April 5th with our regular schedules of services. If our closure needs to be extended, we'll post information here as well as on our website. Please pray with us that God will quickly conquer this virus invasion and bring glory to his own name. Also, one announcement for something we are going to do Saturday this week from 8 till noon. We're planning a work day for some of the guys to come together and do some work around the building. So if you're interested in helping out with that, we will try to keep our 10 feet distance and all that kind of stuff just so. All right, so come on out and help us with that this Saturday, 8 o'clock. All right, so let me pray, and then we're going to get started. Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity to come together. We're praying that you would guide and direct everything that we present here this morning. And I'm praying for your touch upon everybody that's listening, that your hand would be upon them, your presence would be right there with them where they are. And Lord, you bring encouragement and lift and life into our experience today. I just give you thanks already. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. First up is Pastor Mike.
Good morning. I know you're at home saying, what? Good morning? I got to do it at home? Yes. As pastor of prayer, I put together my report, and I'm just going to hit some highlights here and there, but and then some hopeful goals for this coming year. Had 987 calls this year, calling on people, checking them out, checking in to see how they're doing, checking on their prayer requests and those type of things. I lead the Sunday morning prayer time, orchestrate calls to worship. I got to preach on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights, 7 different times. Put together a 40-day prayer and fast last year leading up to Resurrection Sunday. And this year, God kind of said, you need to make it a little more in the face of the people. So, as you know, we started doing it the first full week of each month. And next week, I'm probably going to post it and be every day for up to Resurrection Sunday, focusing on Easter. Goals for this coming year is I'm really wanting our church to take the 9 o'clock prayer time and really run with it, because if you've looked at our past year, there's been a lot of things where God has blessed our church. He started bringing things together because we were found obedient and faithful. Not to say that everything's peaceful and copacetic. There's a lot of issues and strife still, but I believe with all my heart that Scripture clearly states if we come together, one mind, one focus on prayer, He's going to move heaven and earth to make things happen. So that's going to be my focus this coming church year, to really focus in upon making that happen, because again, I want us to pray, and I know when we pray, God will move. He did it in the Bible for the apostles on the day of Pentecost. The earth shook because they were focused. And that is my reports. Respectfully submitted, Pastor Mike Bowling.
Good morning. Because of the circumstances that we are under, I will be giving the youth group's 2019 year-end report via video. There is so much stuff that I had to write it down to make sure that I had it all in. So, 2019 was a very eventful year for our youth. We developed our youth group name. We came up with our mission statement that states to lead teens to become more like Jesus and fully developed followers of Christ, to create a place for teenagers to come together, engage in conversation about God, learn about life, have fun, and be a part of something bigger than themselves. Acts 20:35 says, "In all things I have shown you, by working hard in this way, we must help the weak and remember the words of the Lord Jesus, how he himself said, 'It is more blessed to give than to receive.'" The teens had plenty of opportunity this summer to give back to the community and our church. We volunteered at our food pantry. We painted the detached garage. We helped mulch the front flower beds and helped a church member with some yard work. We were also able to volunteer at the Ronald McDonald House. The teen girls and I got to spend some time together in Fort Wayne at a Choose conference. We went to Hawking Hills for our fall retreat. We kicked off our summer with a pool party. We welcomed the now seventh graders into our youth group with a ice cream social. We had a painting party. Cupcake wars between the girls and the guys. Spent some time at Jay and Veronica's carving pumpkins and karaokeing the day away. We went to the Zoo Lights for a Christmas party. Was able to go up to Mount Vernon for a basketball game and worship together at Winter Jam. So like I said, we had a pretty eventful year, but none of this would have been possible without my amazing team of youth leaders. So I want to thank Jay and Veronica, Jeffy, Dakota, Mike, and David for all your hard work over the past years, all the dedication, all your devotion to our youth group. Thank you so much for everything that you do. I also want to thank our church for your prayers and everything that you've done for our youth group too, and your support. And I cannot wait to see what 2020 has in store for ONAZ Ignite.
Building the app and figuring out content and what things are going to look like on there. The app gives us opportunities to provide digital copies of the bulletin, to post the weekly recordings of our sermons, and also gives us an avenue for the online giving. So if you don't have the app, now would be a good time to go download it so you can do your online giving during these times. I also have recently started adding the sermon notes to the app, so those are also on there to go along with Pastor Jay's sermons. Another major focus this past year was working on making our social media our social media presence more impactful. So we did a lot of work with making sure our events were posted onto Facebook and promoting those financially, like actually making ads out of those, so we were able to impact the community. We did see a lot of people coming into the church for those outreach events that didn't really have any other connection to the church otherwise. So some of those events were like the Easter egg hunts, VBS, our car and craft show, and the fall festival. And then with us having an increased online presence, I worked on making sure that our digital presence was more user-friendly and visually appealing. So I worked a lot this year on making sure that any of the graphics, the announcement slides that you see up there, the flyers that we make, anything that you see as presentation from Obed Church of the Nazarene looks nice, is grammatically correct. So I worked really well with all of our different ministry leaders to let them know that I was available to help with any of that they needed created for them. Another thing that I'm kind of in charge, or not in charge of, that I help coordinate, I should say, is communication with the church congregations. So this past year we worked on making sure that the information for the members of the church, the people who come and attend, we made sure that we had the correct information, and then worked on making sure our email list was up to date and trying to better utilize our email to get information out to all of you. And we bought a new copier, which makes things a little easier around here as well. So that's what the office department did.
Good morning. Again, I get to see me 3 times today. The call to worship today, I was on Facebook a little while ago, and Pastor Tony had posted something that I thought was very interesting and makes a lot of sense, because one of the biggest excuses I hear today, and I'm sure Pastor Jay hears it quite a bit, as to why we don't go to church or why we don't give God a second chance, is I'm too busy, got too much going on, too much of this, too much of that, I've got so much work, I've got this, that, and the other. I said, well, and I guess one way to put a positive spin on this coronavirus 19 or whatever you want to call it, really bad flu that could not end well for you, whatever you want to call it, is she had put a statement, and it says, now that the movie theaters are closed, the restaurants are closed, we've been the governor and the president are saying stay home, try not to get out, try not to do different things. And it ended by saying, now that I've taken away the busyness of life, are you ready to spend some time together? And positively speaking about all the craziness that's happening, maybe God is going to use this to get his people to finally take a deep breath, dive into his word, and spend some time face to face with him. Because he desires that. He wants to be with his creation. And for the longest time, we've always had an excuse, like, I got too much going on, I got to go do this, I got to go do that, and then the list goes on and on and on. But God said, you know what? I'm going to make it to where you don't have a choice. Either you spend time with me or you don't. Those are your 2 options. And I believe if we want the fullness of God, then we're going to do that during this time and really make it a priority. Okay, what did I really not need to do beforehand that I could eliminate out of my schedule so that I can make time for my relationship with God? So as we go into worship, I would ask you to think about that over the next week or so that we're going through this situation, that what am I doing to strengthen my relationship with God? And 2, when this crisis is over, because there will be an end eventually, what do I need to eliminate so that I can always have my face time with God?
Good morning, everyone. So glad you're back tuning in. These are weird times, just happen to kind of be isolated and, away from everybody who are used to being around. Work is slowed and interaction is slowed down, but as Mike said, I feel like this is a great time than ever to just make sure that we're getting right with God, spending that time in isolation with him. Let's worship this morning.
Holy fire,
burn away my desire for anything that is not of you and is of me. I want more of you and less of me. Holy fire, burn away my desire for anything that is not of you and is of me. I want more of you and less of me. Empty me. Empty me. Fill, won't you fill me with you, yeah. Holy fire, burn away my desire for anything that is not of you and is of me. I want more of you and less of me. Empty me. Empty me. Fill, won't you fill me with you, yeah. Holy fire, burn away my desire for anything that is not of you and is of me. I want more of you and less of me. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain, to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain, to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. Oh, sufficient sacrifice, so freely given, such a price, bought our salvation. Heaven's gates swing wide. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain, to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. There's an army rising up. There's an army rising up. There's an army rising up to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain, to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain, to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that He should give His only Son to make a wretch His treasure. How great the pain of searing loss. The Father turns His face away as wounds which mar the chosen one. Bring many sons to glory. Behold a man upon a cross, my sin upon His shoulders. Ashamed, I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held Him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me life. I know that it is finished. I will not boast in anything, no gifts, no power, no wisdom, but I will boast in Jesus Christ, His death and resurrection. Why should I gain from his reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart. His wounds have paid my ransom. Why should I gain from his reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart. His wounds have paid my ransom. Only one I need. I bow all of me at your feet. I will worship you alone. You have given me more than I could ever have wanted, and I want to give you my heart and my soul. You alone are Father, and you alone are good, and you alone are Savior, and you alone are God. You are the only one I need. I bow all of me at your feet. I will worship you alone. You have given me more than I could ever have wanted, and I want to give you my heart and my soul. You alone are Father, and you alone are good, and you alone are Savior, and you alone are God. I'm alive, 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 I'm alive. For you alone are Father, and you
Prayer time. One of my favorite times of the day or moments that I have is spending some time face to face with my Creator, the one who brought me salvation. I enjoyed this song because one of the phrases that really got me thinking is as Dalton was singing, I'm alive. And my question is, are you alive? Well, Pastor Mike, my heart's beating. I think I'm alive. I'm like, no, are you alive? Well, I can get up and go to work and do things. I'm alive. Like, no, Jesus wants to know, are you alive? Spiritually. Are we alive spiritually in Him to be able to do what He's called us to do as He's created us to be, or be what He's created us to be? Prayer time, until I understood it, scared me because I'm like, I'm afraid God's not going to like me because of all the stuff I've done, or what is on the inside, or what I've done in my past, or my thoughts, or what have you. But God doesn't care about all that. He wants to make you alive in Him. He wants to clean all that stuff out and create a new person, a new being. With that being said, as we go into prayer, there's a few things. I was just talking or texting Jennifer Lockhart, and their dad is doing much better. He has to go into the hospital, I believe tomorrow or Tuesday, for an overnight treatment process. And not that that's bad in and of itself, but his wife will not be allowed to stay with him, and that's what kills. Because husbands and wife, they support each other. And my father-in-law, Jim Merritt's going to have some treatments this week as well, and will not be allowed to sit with him while he does it. So they're going through some tough stuff. And, if anybody thinks it's a walk in the park, it's not. They're putting liquid poison in there to kill the cancer cells. And it's tough. I would also like to pray for the hospital workers and the health workers who have to interact with these patients because of, the illness has progressed so far that they need to be hospitalized or what have you. And, it could be the worst is yet to come. We don't know. But I want you to know that we serve a God who created the universe, who created how many hundreds of billions, if not trillions of people throughout the history of mankind, and there's no two alike. We serve a God who has created how many trees in the world and how many leaves are on each one of those trees, and not a one of them are identical. This is the God we serve. So I implore you these next couple of weeks to take the time and spend on your face praying, God, move. I'm here, use me. Check in on people. I got a couple phone calls this past couple days, people checking, hey, just checking in on you, see how you were doing. And, so do that this coming week. Call some people. Say, hey, haven't heard from you. Thought I'd call and see if you need anything, or be the hands and feet of Jesus. And who knows, maybe we can touch somebody new for the kingdom. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for the privilege and the invention of technology to where we can come together maybe by technical kind of different things, Lord, but we're here together in one spirit. Lord God, focusing in upon our relationship with you, focusing in upon how we can become more intimate with you, how we can have more of those face-to-face times with you. I pray, Lord, that as we go through these next couple of weeks, Lord God, that you begin to search our hearts and our minds, Lord God, and make sure that there are no wicked ways in us, Lord God, anything that might separate us from you. Lord God, you have somehow brought about the elimination of the busyness of our schedules and the busyness of our lives, Lord, that we may spend time with you. I pray, Lord, that as we no longer have that excuse of being too busy or too much stuff going on or too this or too that, Lord God, that we choose to go into our prayer closet, to go to our study desk where we search your word and study it, Lord God, and really intimately search for those golden nuggets of truth that we have yet to learn of you. Lord God, just help us to spend some time in your presence. I pray, Lord God, that you touch our mind, our bodies, and our hearts and our souls. Lord God, that as we go about our daily lives, whether we're stuck in a house or going to our jobs or what have you, Lord God, whatever you have us do, Lord God, that we can look for ways to be your hands and feet to our friends, our families, our neighbors, and even to strangers, Lord God, because everybody needs a touch from you, whether they know it or not. I pray, Lord, that you help us to get creative in ministering, Lord. I pray, Lord, that you help us to be obedient when you bring someone to our hearts and our minds, Lord, that we just not pray for them, Lord, that we pick up the phone and call them and interact with them and talk with them and Lord, search out those that may need an extra help, Lord God. And if we're able to provide those helps, God, just... you know what ministries need to be done in this time, and you know who has those abilities to meet those needs. I pray, Lord, that you bless our church, Lord, as we begin to really dive deep into you over these next couple of weeks. Teach us something new through your word. Encourage us, and Lord, I just pray that you bless us this day and bless us a lot as we do our very best to honor and glorify you. In Jesus' name, amen.
As Pastor Mike mentioned about getting creative and trying to make connections and touch people in new ways, I just had a text a moment ago from Amy Duncan Cook. I knew her by Amy Duncan first, sorry. But she says, missing your friends and family? Join us via Zoom tonight at 6 so we can see all your faces and do our nightly devotion as a group. We'll also teach you the moves to one of our favorite chapel songs from Tallulah School, Share and Invite. And then there's the thing to get on Zoom. Zoom, one of those new things that I have no clue how to do yet. But we're learning. I'm learning. We're going to have a meeting on Tuesday evening with Zoom, so it's just going to be interesting. My plan is to hopefully get a Bible study together by Wednesday night to do as a group as well. So we'll get information out about that. If you're interested, just let us know, and we'll get that all together. This morning, the title of the message is, We Need to Look to Jesus. You ever seen the t-shirt that says, y'all need Jesus, right? Well, we do. We all need Jesus, and we all need to look to Jesus. James Dobson's wife, Shirley, she wrote a book entitled Certain Peace in Uncertain Times, which speaks to our fears and anxieties. She shared, we all want peaceful lives and contented hearts, yet with threats to our tranquility growing at seemingly exponential rate, is it any wonder that many of us succumb to worry and fear? More important, is there a solution? Can we know certain peace in these uncertain times? The answer, of course, is yes. When problems threaten to engulf us, we must do what believers have always done: turn to the Lord for encouragement and solace. In Hebrews 12, verse 2, it says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Look to Jesus. In these uncertain times, which way do you need to look? Well, for certain, right off the bat here, I think we need to look up. Look up to God to grow closer to the one who will see us through. He's going to see us through. I just believe he will. There's going to be victory on the other side of whatever we face. Psalm 5, verses 2 and 3 say, "Give heed to the voice of my cry, my King and my God. For to you I will pray. My voice you shall hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning I will direct it to you, and I will look up." There's something special about looking up. All the negatives seem to be like when we're down in the mouth. We're looking down, but we need to look up. We need to look up to the Lord. He is here. He is right here with us, and he is going to see us through. I think in this time we need to look in. Look into yourself to know who you are and whose you are. Make sure there's nothing in there separating you from God. Psalm 139 says in verses 23 and 24, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties, and see if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." I pray regularly, "Lord, search me, break me, stretch me, lead me, use me." I think that's what this is all about. God wants us to look to him. And as we look to him, we realize there's stuff in us that is less than the best. There's things he needs to break off of us to free us from, not to hurt us, but to bring us victory, plus to give us impact on others. We need to look up, we need to look in. I think for a moment we need to look back. We need to look back to be reminded of how God has helped you before and how he has prepared you for such a time as this. Psalm 18, verses 1 through 3 say, "I will love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. My God, my strength in whom I will trust. My shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies." How did David know that God was all that strong? Because he'd been strong for him in the past. How did he know he could be a rock for him? He had been his rock in the past. How did he know he could deliver him? He had delivered him in the past. I think there's times we need to look to our past to see where God has been involved before. How he has sustained us, how he has helped us, how he's held us together, how he has brought victory to our lives. We need to look back. And there's a moment we need to look down. We need to look down to be aware of your problems. But beware, that is where negativity dwells. Negativity produces fear, not faith. You don't need negativity, amen? None of that stuff. Too often, that is where we are fixated, and then we fall into despair and depression and all the other negatives down the road. We can look down to see that there is a problem, and we can look down to realize there is an enemy. Peter said, 1 Peter 5, verses 8 through 11, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour." Peter was aware of the enemy. But he said, this is what you can do to him. Resist him. Be steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. You're not going through this by yourself. You are not necessarily that unique. Oh yes, every leaf is different, every thumbprint is different, but the situations of your life are common. To a lot of people, they're all going through the same thing you're going through. We're in the same boat together. Many are suffering the same things that you're experiencing. But may the God, verse 10, but may the God of all grace, who called us to his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after you have suffered a while, this too will pass. Do we believe it? This too will pass. We're going to see the other side of this thing. But after you have suffered a while, he will perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. Do we feel strengthened and settled in the midst of this chaos? Probably not. But as we get to the other side of it, we're going to realize he helped us through. To him be the glory and the dominion forever and ever. Amen. We can look down for a moment to realize there's a problem, to realize that there's an enemy dogging at our heels. But we got to get beyond that. James 4 says, therefore submit to God. Resist the devil, and he'll flee from you. Draw near to God, and he'll draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. There is a need to look down, to realize what we're dealing with. But then we need to look around. Look around. Look around to see who is hurting and who needs your help. Show mercy on your neighbors. Luke 10 gives us that very familiar story about the Good Samaritan. And jumping into just a few verses of that, verse 35. On the next day, when he departed, he took out 2 denarii. He took out money out of his own pocket and gave those to the innkeeper and said to him, take care of this man, take care of him, the one who was wounded, and whatever more you spend, when I come again, I will repay you. So which of these 3, well, we talked about the priest and the Levite, and then the Good Samaritan. Which of these 3 do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? And he said, the one who was responding to Jesus, he who showed mercy on him. Then Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. Go be a neighbor. The question is really asking, who is my neighbor? The question really is, are you a neighbor? Are you one that's going to step up and step out and be involved in the lives of others around you that are hurting? We've got plenty of them out there. I know that in this craziness of distancing ourselves from people around us, we need to do the smart things and the right things. But we need to do the best things too. Somehow find ways to be aware of people around us who are in need and try to meet those needs. Look around. People are out there. This might be the time that those people be more open to you and to your Lord. Look ahead. Look ahead for the possibilities of what God has yet in store for his own. It's amazing how the altitude of our gaze affects the attitude of our hearts. Amen? The altitude of our gaze, how we're looking, affects the attitude of our hearts. Pilots try to keep the nose of their plane fixed on the horizon before them. The term that they use to talk about the relationship of the nose of their plane to that horizon is the word attitude. Isn't that interesting? If you're headed down, evidently you're getting a bad attitude. If you're headed up, you've got a good attitude. I don't know. But how is your attitude this morning? And how has it affected your altitude? Jeremiah 29 says, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and go and pray to me, and I will listen to you. And you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart." How's your heart? How has your heart been affected by the gaze of your eyes? Do you need to lift up your vision, look unto Jesus, the author and finisher of your faith? There's an old hymn that talks about turning your eyes upon Jesus. Turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. The verses go, "O soul, are you weary and troubled? No light in the darkness you see? There's light for a look at the Savior, and life more abundant and free. Through death into life everlasting he passed, and we follow him there. Over us sin no more hath dominion, for more than conquerors we are. His word shall not fail you, he promised. Believe him, and all will be well. Then go to a world that is dying, his perfect salvation to tell." Could you try to sing it with me? Turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. We get our eyes fixed on this earth. All the problems, all the troubles, all the negativity, all the enemy, all what he's trying to do. And it's going to crash us. We need to turn our eyes on Jesus. Lift up our gaze. Look up to Jesus. Look up to the Lord. And he will lift up our countenance too. Amen? He will. He will do that. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, here again this morning we've come together just to meet with you, even though we have a hard time meeting with each other because of how we're directed in these days. But Lord, we have met together. And I believe that you are with all of our people, wherever they are this morning, listening in, watching the video. Lord, that you are right there in their midst. You are touching their lives. You are touching their hearts. You are helping them to determine in their life to look up, to be drawn to you, and to resist the devil, resist all that negativity, and be lifted up into your presence. Thank you, dear Lord, this morning for all that you're doing and have accomplished already in our midst. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Dalton's going to sing a song for us.
Amen. So to close out, I think it'd be a good idea, something that was requested of me, is to have us all stand.
That'd be great.
In your houses or wherever you're at right now, if you can, let's stand and let's sing the last song, "In Christ Alone."
In Christ alone, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song. this cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are stilled, when striving cease. My comforter, my all in all, here in the love of Christ I stand. In Christ alone, who took on flesh, fullness of God and helpless babe, this gift of love and righteousness, scorned by the ones he came to save, till on that cross as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied. For every sin on him was laid, here in the death of Christ I live. There in the ground his body lay, light of the world by darkness laid, then bursting forth in glorious day, up from the grave he rose again. And as he stands in victory, sin's curse has lost its grip on me. For I am his and he is mine, bought with the precious blood of Christ. No guilt in life, no fear in death, this is the power of Christ in me. From life's first cry to the final breath, Jesus commands my destiny. No power in hell, no scheme of man could ever pluck me from his hand, till he returns or calls me home. Here in the power of Christ I'll stand. No power of hell, no scheme of man could ever pluck me from his hand, till he returns or calls me home. Here in the power of Christ I'll stand.
Man, stand in Christ. Be empowered by Christ. Live for him and be blessed. Dear God, again, thank you so much for your presence wherever we are. Lord, just help us to live, to glorify you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Thank you. Have a great day.